Hi, my name is William Allen. This is my case study for EDL 853 entitled Get This Child Out of My Room. It's a study that follows a student with a behavioral disorder and a veteran teacher that is seeking to get him out of her room. Category 1, Problem Identification and Analysis. What I know about this case. We are at a small rural school with 16 schools in its cooperative. There's a lot of shared resources and limited resources, and there's also limited staffing. There's one administrator that cycles through these schools on a weekly basis, but on a day-to-day level, the head teacher is in charge of those day-to-day duties. It follows Carl, who is a third grade student with a behavioral disorder, whose parents just went through a messy divorce. Mrs. Nancy Taylor, the third grade general education teacher, who has 10 years teaching experience and is a pretty good teacher. And Miss Susan Green, who is fresh out of college in her first special education job, taking over for the veteran of 25 years before her. The main source of contention is handling Carl's increasingly aggressive behavior. So before, his behavior was self-harm, and now it's becoming aggressive towards Mrs. Taylor and towards other students. What I still need to know, what resources are available in both the school and the community. So with limited resources, I like to know exactly what kind of help I'm going to be able to secure. What does Carl think of the matter? What does he think the problem is? Does he see a problem? And how can he contribute to finding the solution to the problem? And what steps has Nancy taken to address the behavior outside of his plan? So just and on top of the reward system that's already in place because of the IEP, what is she doing to help resolve the issues in her classroom? The main problem is that Carl's behavior is turning from self-harm to aggressive behavior towards others, especially Mrs. Nancy Taylor. The worst incident of him sharpening a pencil and throwing it at her, and numerous other instances. The parties involved are not on the same page of how they should handle the situation, particularly Miss Green and Mrs. Taylor. We need to determine what is the least restrictive environment for Carl and how can we legally accommodate his needs. There also needs to be a culture shift on handling situations like this in their school. And we also need to help the parents help Carl. There's a lot of problems going on in this case study. Category 2, my proposed plan of action is 3 steps. So step 1, the very first thing is to work together to create an intervention plan immediately to get Carl out of the room in those high stress situations where their real safety or the safety is really an issue for the other students and Mrs. Taylor. I think it should include Carl's input on a day-to-day level. Maybe this includes a cool-down spot or a cooperating teacher where if he needs to cool down and take a break, he can go to that room with maybe just a hand signal. I would call for a reevaluation of Carl if necessary to determine what his least restrictive environment is. In the past, the general education classroom has served his needs, but maybe we need to see if that's still the case, and maybe he needs some pull-out time to teach him some skills. And finally, to find a new behavior plan that actually will develop his skills in coping with stressful situations and handling them appropriately. Step 2 would be to seek out a lot of resources, any resources really, to help Carl and the parents adjust to this stressful situation of a messy divorce. It could include people like paraprofessionals, possibly being evaluated for medication. He has 2 older siblings that are both also on emotional IEPs, and one of them takes medicine, so possibly that could help him. Counseling services. This is a very stressful time in their lives, and I think he needs to talk through it with someone. And perhaps a mentoring problem. His dad doesn't seem to be involved all that much anymore, so maybe he needs a good male influence in his life through a program like Big Brothers or Big Brothers Big Sisters or something like that. And to try to shift the attention back onto Carl, a lot of the parents and people involved are focused on what's best for them and not really what's best for Carl. And then finally, step 3, I would try to actively engage staff in training and discussion on what the least restrictive environment is and how special education should be handled. For years, it seems that their solution has just been to pull children with problematic behavior out of the classroom and put them in detention, which is not very productive. And then finally, coordinate with the administrator and other staff to provide the attention that he needs. So work together with everyone involved and truly create a plan that's best serving Carl. And how this resolves issues, or will hopefully resolve issues. For Carl and the students, immediately addressing the real danger of his aggressive behavior will make it a safer environment for everyone. To implement an updated behavior plan that's going to be effective will be a big, a big help in solving the problem. Providing resources for Carl to support him emotionally. He does need a lot of support in this hard time. Excuse me, and providing those resources will do nothing but help. And being proactive in addressing behavior. Reacting to bad situations is great, but if we can be proactive and prevent them from happening, we're making even more progress. And then with the staff, I would try to resolve the issues between Mrs. Taylor and Miss Green, their issues on how this should be handled. Try to help them work collaboratively together to open up discussions and really focus again on the student and how this is going to help benefit Carl in the long run, and not just taking the easy way out of pulling Carl out of her classroom. I would encourage collaboration so everyone has the same approach, so everyone is on the same page of how we're going to help Carl out. And then finally, training provided to help promote a culture shift. So again, bringing in that extra help to the staff so they can better deal with issues that arise such as this. And finally, we're going to resolve some issues with the parents, or at least help provide some support for them. So providing those resources for the parents, such as counseling services, doctor recommendations, something to help them help Carl. We're going to document Carl's behaviors in the classroom and outside of the classroom to share out to the parents to update them on how his progress is going, what we need to change, and what's working for him. And then we're going to intentionally discuss Carl's progression. We're going to set up times to truly see where we're at in the situation and how we are going to move forward from there. So category 4, some of the thoughts that I had was that there was just a lot of problems with this case, this poor school and this poor family and this poor teacher. The school is understaffed. The parents are almost neglectful towards Carl and so focused on their messy divorce that he's not getting the attention he needs. There's aggression and a real threat to the teacher and to students, which is very problematic. The resources that they're lacking and the attitudes of the teachers that are there and veteran are kind of stale and not really student-centered. Some of the feelings I had, again, this was a sad case to read. Poor Carl, poor Mrs. Taylor, poor parents. Yeah, divorce is just such a real thing that can be very, very hard time for families. I felt also proud for Miss Green for sticking to her beliefs and trying to help find the best environment for Carl to learn in. And I felt optimistic at some of the steps that we could take to try to help this kid out and to help resolve the issues. What I valued most was finding the appropriate setting for Carl, so where he is going to find success both academically and really making sure that his well-being is in mind when addressing these issues. Some of the unresolved issues after reading this case study: will the behavior plan be effective? Will what we put in place be effective? Will it be implemented faithfully? Because Mrs. Taylor is not really on board at this point with just changing the behavior plan. She wants him gone. So will that be effective? Will Carl's parents be more involved? Is there a way that we're going to pull them back in and really get them focused on Carl and not just the messiness that's happening in their lives? And what resources, again, can we secure? What resources are out there and available that we can lock down even with our limited funding and resources? Category 5, promoting the academic success and personal well-being of every student. So in this case, component 1 was academic success for all students. So finding the least restrictive environment for Carl, keeping him in the classroom as much as possible, seemed to be working in the past, and to continue to keep him there with a better behavior plan in place. Helping Mrs. Taylor so she can spend more time teaching rather than worrying about Carl will help not only Carl but the other students. And then the other students, creating a safer environment for them will automatically promote learning. When you're feeling safe and secure, you are open to learning. Component 2 was looking out for the well-being of all students. So for the classroom, relieving some stress on Mrs. Taylor and the other students, again, will open them up to having a healthy educational experience. For Carl, providing some services to help him cope and teaching him new behaviors to prevent those instances from occurring again in the future will really help him to be a healthier student. And then finally, helping the parents help Carl, so offering them resources again. Component 3 enhancing the instructional capacity. So for the class, minimizing interruptions for Mrs. Taylor and other students, again, that's going to enhance their experience of education and open them up for better education. For Carl, providing the support emotionally will help open up his learning potential. If you're in a crisis, you're not going to be able to learn. And finally, for staff, training will help other members teach more effectively to all their students in the future and now.